June 14th, 1943, 23:40 hours, Mid-Atlantic, 900 miles west of Ireland. Captain Lieutenant Klaus Hartmann commanded U-456, a Type 8 submarine conducting anti-convoy operations in the Atlantic's central region. His boat had been submerged throughout daylight hours, conserving battery power while avoiding Allied air patrols. Now, with darkness providing protection, U-456 ran on the surface, diesel engines charging batteries while the crew enjoyed brief respite from the submarine's cramped interior. Hartmann was confident in his position's security. The Mid-Atlantic air gap, the region beyond range of land-based Allied aircraft, had been U-boat forces' sanctuary throughout the war. Allied bombers and patrol aircraft operating from Britain, Iceland, or North America couldn't reach this area, leaving submarines free to operate on the surface without fear of air attack. The gap represented approximately 600 miles of ocean where U-boats could hunt convoys, recharge batteries, and conduct surface transits without the constant vigilance required closer to Allied air bases. The night was clear, visibility excellent. Hartmann's lookouts scanned the horizon routinely, watching for convoy escorts or patrol aircraft that couldn't possibly be present this far from land. The ocean was empty in all directions, the submarine alone in dark water under star-filled sky. Then one lookout reported a sound, faint mechanical rumbling inconsistent with wave noise or submarine machinery. Hartmann listened, heard nothing initially, then detected it. Distant engine noise, multiple engines, the distinctive sound of aircraft propellers. But that was impossible. No Allied aircraft had the range to reach this position, which was why U-456 operated here confidently. The sound intensified. Hartmann ordered crash dive, standard procedure when aircraft were detected. But before the klaxon could sound, searchlights blazed across the water, illuminating U-456 in blinding white light. A massive four-engine aircraft descended from darkness, machine guns already firing, the tracers converging on the submarine's conning tower. Hartmann had seconds to process what he was seeing. A flying boat, enormous and heavily armed, attacking from altitude that suggested it had been tracking U-456 for some time before revealing itself. The aircraft's guns raked the submarine's deck, killing the lookouts instantly, puncturing the pressure hull in multiple locations. Hartmann screamed the order to dive, but U-456 was already taking water through the bullet holes, and the aircraft's depth charges were falling. The explosions lifted U-456 partially out of the water, the pressure hull rupturing under forces that exceeded its design limits. Hartmann never understood what had attacked him. Only that aircraft appeared where no aircraft should exist, attacked with precision that suggested advanced detection equipment, and killed his boat before effective evasion was possible. U-456 left no survivors. The British short Sunderland that destroyed her, aircraft G. George from No. 201 Squadron, recorded the kill in its log and continued patrol, searching for additional U-boats in the gap that Germany believed was safe from air attack. The Flying Porcupine. The short Sunderland earned its German nickname, the Flying Porcupine, through defensive armament that exceeded most contemporary bombers. The aircraft mounted defensive guns in nose, dorsal, tail, and beam positions, creating overlapping fields of fire that made attacking the Sunderland extremely dangerous for German fighters. The defensive capability wasn't theoretical. Multiple Sunderlands engaged and defeated German fighter attacks through coordinated defensive fire that German pilots hadn't anticipated from what appeared to be a lumbering transport aircraft. One famous engagement saw a Sunderland attacked by 8 Junkers Ju-88 fighters over the Bay of Biscay. The Sunderland's crew fought back with all available weapons, shooting down one fighter, damaging several others, and forcing the remaining German aircraft to break off the attack. The Sunderland returned to base with over 600 bullet holes but remained airworthy throughout the engagement. German fighter pilots learned that attacking Sunderlands was high-risk proposition. The aircraft's size made it appear slow and vulnerable, but the defensive armament and crew training created deadly crossfire that German fighters couldn't avoid while pressing attacks. Several German fighters were lost attacking Sunderlands, leading Luftwaffe commanders to caution pilots about engaging the heavily armed flying boats unless absolutely necessary. The offensive armament was equally impressive. Sunderlands carried depth charges, typically 8 weapons weighing 250 pounds each, mounted on racks beneath the wings. The charges were armed with contact fuses that detonated on impact with water, creating underwater explosions that could rupture submarine pressure hulls if dropped accurately. The aircraft also carried machine guns for strafing attacks against surface submarines, suppressing deck gun crews and damaging external equipment. The crew size reflected the aircraft's complexity and capability. A typical Sunderland carried 10 to 13 crew members: pilots, flight engineer, navigator, radio operator, radar operator, and multiple gunners. This large crew allowed sustained operations with personnel rotating through rest periods during long patrols, maintaining alertness throughout 14-hour missions that would have exhausted smaller crews. The Atlantic's fatal geography. The Battle of the Atlantic's outcome hinged on geography that seemed to favor Germany decisively. The Atlantic Ocean's width exceeded the operational range of land-based aircraft, creating a gap in Allied air coverage where U-boats could operate with impunity. Aircraft flying from Britain could patrol approximately 600 miles west before fuel limitations forced them to return. Aircraft flying from North America faced similar range restrictions. The gap between these patrol areas represented roughly 600 miles of ocean, where U-boats were effectively immune to air attack. This air gap became the most dangerous region of ocean in history. U-boats concentrated there, attacking convoys that had to cross the gap, regardless of the danger. The submarines could surface safely, recharge batteries, conduct maintenance, and maneuver freely without the constant threat of air attack that characterized operations closer to Allied air bases. German doctrine evolved to exploit this sanctuary, with U-boats positioning themselves in the gap to intercept convoys crossing the Atlantic. The casualty statistics from the air gap were horrific. Between 1940 and early 1943, hundreds of merchant ships were sunk in the mid-Atlantic, with tens of thousands of sailors killed. The convoys had to cross the gap. There was no alternative route, but crossing meant accepting substantial losses to U-boats that Allied surface escorts couldn't detect or engage effectively. The submarines had tactical advantage. They could spot convoys from periscope depth, attack at night when visibility favored submarines, and withdraw before escorts could locate them. Allied naval commanders understood that closing the air gap was essential to winning the Battle of the Atlantic. If aircraft could patrol the gap, U-boats would be forced to remain submerged, drastically reducing their effectiveness and exposing them to detection by surface escorts. But existing aircraft lacked the range to reach the gap. Long-range bombers like the B-24 Liberator were being deployed for this role, but initial availability was limited as most production went to bombing campaigns rather than maritime patrol. Britain's solution was the short Sunderland flying boat, an aircraft originally designed for passenger and mail transport but adapted for military patrol with modifications that transformed it into the most capable long-range anti-submarine aircraft of the war. The Sunderland's range exceeded 1,400 miles operational radius when configured for maximum endurance, sufficient to patrol deep into the Atlantic air gap and return to base with fuel reserves. The aircraft could remain on patrol for 14 hours or more, searching vast ocean areas that surface ships required days to cover. The technological edge. The Sunderland's effectiveness stemmed partly from advanced detection equipment that gave crews capability to locate submarines in conditions where visual observation was impossible. The ASV, air-to-surface vessel, radar could detect surface submarines at ranges exceeding 10 miles under favorable conditions, allowing Sunderlands to conduct night patrols that located U-boats charging batteries on the surface. The radar capability transformed submarine warfare fundamentally. Before radar-equipped aircraft appeared, U-boats could surface at night with reasonable confidence that darkness provided protection from air attack. Radar eliminated this protection, making night surface operations extremely dangerous. U-boats detected by radar-equipped Sunderlands often had insufficient warning to dive before the aircraft attacked, creating situations where submarines were caught on the surface and destroyed before they could submerge. German U-boat force responded by installing radar detection equipment that warned crews when they were being tracked by Allied radar. But this created tactical dilemma. If submarines remained surfaced after detecting radar, they risked being attacked. If they dived immediately upon detecting radar, they abandoned their mission and potentially revealed their position to Allied forces. The psychological pressure was significant. U-boat crews never knew whether detected radar was from distant aircraft on different course or from Sunderland already positioning for attack. The Sunderland's ability to land on water provided operational flexibility that land-based aircraft couldn't match. If the aircraft suffered damage or mechanical problems during patrol, crews could land on the ocean, conduct repairs, and resume operations or await rescue. Several Sunderlands landed in rough seas to rescue downed air crews or survivors from torpedoed merchant ships, demonstrating capabilities that no land-based aircraft possessed. The killing efficiency. Sunderland attacks on U-boats were conducted with practiced efficiency that reflected extensive training and accumulated combat experience. The typical attack profile began with radar detection of surface submarine, followed by visual identification using searchlights or star shells that illuminated the target. The aircraft would approach at low altitude, often below 100 feet, minimizing the time U-boats had to dive before attack. The depth charges were released in carefully timed pattern that created overlapping explosions around the submarine's position. Accurate attacks required predicting where the submarine would be when charges exploded, accounting for submarine's evasive maneuvers and dive angle. Experienced crews achieved remarkable accuracy, placing charges close enough that the pressure waves crushed submarine pressure hulls even without direct hits. The strafing attacks served multiple purposes. Machine gun fire suppressed U-boat deck guns, preventing submarines from fighting back effectively. It damaged external equipment like periscopes, radar antennas, and snorkels, reducing submarine effectiveness even if the boat survived. Psychologically, the strafing created terror among U-boat crews who understood that their boat was under attack from weapons they couldn't effectively counter. German U-boat crews described Sunderland attacks with consistent terror. One survivor reported, "The aircraft appeared from darkness, searchlights blinding us instantly. We heard machine gun fire, felt the boat shudder from hits, then the explosions as depth charges detonated around us. The entire attack lasted perhaps 30 seconds, but those were the longest seconds of my life." We survived because the captain completed emergency dive before the charges arrived, but the pressure waves damaged our hulls severely. We limped back to port, unable to dive deeper than 50 meters. The kill confirmation procedures were thorough. Sunderland crews would circle the attack site, photographing evidence of successful attacks, oil slicks, debris fields, survivors in the water. This documentation allowed intelligence analysts to confirm kills and assess attack effectiveness. The photographs also served morale purposes, providing proof that the exhausting patrols were achieving results. The strategic transformation. The deployment of Sunderlands and other very long-range aircraft to Atlantic patrol duties in 1943 transformed the Battle of the Atlantic decisively. The air gap that had been U-boat sanctuary became hunting ground where submarines were detected and attacked routinely. German doctrine that depended on safe mid-Atlantic operations collapsed as aircraft appeared throughout regions that had been beyond Allied air coverage. The statistics documented this transformation. U-boat losses increased dramatically during 1943 as air coverage expanded. Submarines that had operated confidently in the mid-Atlantic found themselves under constant threat of air attack, forcing them to remain submerged longer, reducing their effectiveness against convoys. The psychological impact was profound. U-boat crews understood that no location was safe, that aircraft could appear anywhere, that surface operations risked instant death. German U-boat force attempted tactical adaptations. Submarines began diving immediately upon detecting aircraft radar rather than risking surface combat. Snorkel equipment was installed, allowing submarines to run diesel engines while submerged at periscope depth, reducing surface exposure. Defensive armament was increased on some boats, allowing them to fight back against aircraft attacks. None of these measures restored the operational freedom that U-boats had enjoyed when the air gap provided sanctuary. Admiral Karl Dönitz, commanding German U-boat force, acknowledged in memoirs that closing the air gap was a decisive factor in losing the Battle of the Atlantic. When Allied aircraft could patrol throughout the Atlantic, our submarines lost their operational effectiveness. The necessity of remaining submerged for extended periods reduced their speed, range, and ability to locate convoys. The constant threat of air attack degraded crew morale and created psychological stress that affected operational decisions. We could not win the Atlantic battle once Allied air power reached everywhere our submarines operated. The human dimension. Sunderland crews developed distinct culture, shaped by long patrols over empty ocean hunting enemies they rarely saw. The flights were tedious, hours of scanning dark water, operating radar equipment, maintaining vigilant watch despite fatigue and boredom. The brief moments of combat were intensely violent, requiring instant transition from routine patrol to precision attack under conditions where mistakes meant mission failure or death. The crew bonds were strong, forged through shared danger and extended time in confined aircraft interior. Sunderlands had bunks, galley facilities, and sufficient interior space that crews could move around during long patrols, creating almost ship-like atmosphere distinct from cramped bomber aircraft. The crews ate meals together, slept in shifts, and maintained social interactions that sustained morale during missions that could last 14 hours or more. Flight Lieutenant David Thompson flew Sunderlands throughout 1943 and 1944, completing over 100 operational patrols. His account captured the experience. The patrols were endless hours of nothing, punctuated by moments of absolute terror when we located submarines. We'd fly through darkness and weather, maintaining patrol patterns that covered hundreds of miles of empty ocean, searching for enemies that could be anywhere or nowhere. When we found them, everything happened instantly. Lights, guns, depth charges, evasive maneuvers, all compressed into seconds that determined whether we killed them or they killed us. Then we'd return to patrol, searching for the next target, knowing it could be ours or never. The final assessment. Klaus Hartmann's U-456, destroyed in the mid-Atlantic by a Sunderland that appeared where German doctrine said aircraft couldn't reach, represented Germany's strategic failure in the Battle of the Atlantic. The air gap that was supposed to provide sanctuary became killing ground, where British flying boats hunted submarines with precision that German crews found incomprehensible. The short Sunderland's contribution to Allied victory was substantial, but often overlooked, in favor of more dramatic weapon systems. The flying boats didn't win battles through spectacular firepower or revolutionary technology. They won through sustained patrol operations that gradually shifted the Battle of the Atlantic's balance, forcing U-boats into defensive posture that eliminated their effectiveness against convoys. The aircraft served throughout the war and into peacetime, proving the basic design's soundness. Post-war assessment confirmed that very long-range aircraft patrol had been essential to defeating the U-boat threat, validating the resources invested in Sunderland production and operations. The flying boat's unique combination of range, endurance, defensive capability, and offensive firepower created weapon system that no single alternative could replace. For German U-boat crews, the Sunderland remained most feared aircraft they encountered. The knowledge that aircraft could appear anywhere in the Atlantic at any time, attacking with overwhelming force before submarines could dive, created constant psychological pressure that degraded combat effectiveness even when aircraft weren't actually present. The sound of aircraft engines over the ocean became sound. U-boat crews learned to fear above all others because that sound might be the last thing they heard before depth charges arrived. The British flying boat that sank German U-boats from thousands of miles away succeeded not through technological sophistication but through operational persistence, flying endless patrols over empty ocean, maintaining vigilance when nothing happened for hours, attacking instantly when targets appeared, returning to base to refuel, and repeating the process until the Battle of the Atlantic was won through accumulated victories that each seemed insignificant but collectively proved decisive.